Before we begin, I am going to have, I know the names are up there, but I will have a really brief, the planning board introduce themselves. I can start. My name is Lori Clark. I am the current chair. Karen?
Karen Kelleher, planning board member.
Meg?
Margaret Costello, planning board member.
Nancy? Oh. Nancy, I don't know if it doesn't say you're on mute. We can't hear you. But Nancy Arsenal, planning board member. John?
John Cloner Romano, planning board member.
All right, we do have a couple of associate members. Debbie?
Debbie Woods, Debbie Woods, non-voting associate member.
And Mark Jones, I can't see you, but I think you are. There you are.
Mark Jones, voting associate member.
And then Valerie.
I'm Valerie Ortiz. I'm the planning director.
All right, so before we begin, I just want to go through a few procedures for the evening. We will, Valerie, I'm correct in saying we have no presentation, correct?
I believe the petitioner would like to make a statement. I don't know that there's a
Okay. So just going to go through the procedure and then we'll get to it. So again, we may have a statement from those who put this citizen's petition forward, and we'll let them do that. We'll then move and take public comments. And then we'll take individual comments from the planning board. Some rules that will be governed by. So everyone who wants to speak will have a chance to do so. And so during the public segment, I will call upon you if you basically raise your hand either physically in vision or virtually on Zoom. And if you have any challenges doing either one of those, you can certainly call out to let us know that you do have a question. I'd ask that only one person speak at a time. If you can introduce yourself and state where you live. You will have 3 minutes to make a comment or ask questions. I'd ask that you address the board as a whole. And essentially, if you are representing a larger group, please let me know and we will give you a few extra moments. Let's see, and just remember that opinions expressed by individual board members do not necessarily represent the opinion of the board as a whole. And I'd ask everyone to be respectful of others' rights, and so that we only have one person speaking at a time. And if you aren't speaking, to try to remain on mute, just because some of the noise can come through. The only other thing that I forgot to say is that when we get to the public comment, I will look to call upon everybody who wants to speak prior to allowing people to make sort of second comments or additional comments for those who have already spoken. Does anybody have any questions on the procedure?
I just had a comment. I think 3 minutes is a huge amount of time. I would be in favor of 2 minutes max. Say what you got to say and get done with it.
All right, I would say let's be brief. We want to try to balance the time, but actually hearing people's opinions as well. All right, so with that, Valerie, I'm not sure who we're passing this over to.
Yes, I believe Mark Bobrowski is here.
Okay.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Good evening, other members of the planning board. Mark Bobrowski, my office is in Concord, and Damon Mill, I represent Linear Retail. You've already heard from the president of Linear, that's Joel Cadis. He spoke earlier on in the workshop session. Also joining us this evening is Greg Droz, who is Director of Development, I believe, at Linear. We have a very brief article. Can I share screens with you if you don't intend to put it up on the screen yourself?
Or it's pretty short. I don't know, Valerie, if you want to just put it up.
Sure, let me find it.
Or if you want to give him
Yes, Mark, I think you can share your screen.
Okay,
If not, let me know. There could be like, if you see a green button at the bottom, there we go.
so this is the actual article in the petition that was submitted to the town clerk's office with the required number of registered voters to be placed on the warrant for annual town meeting. We've asked that the bylaw be amended by deleting existing 3324. This is something subsequent to the use table, and substituting therefore the following. So what we're trying to do is preserve the existing entry 3324 in the use table, and then adding to it an establishment whose principal or ancillary method of operation includes sale of food or beverages for takeout in paper, plastic, or other disposable containers, or where food and beverages are served directly to the customer in a motor vehicle. The reasons that we proposed this article are several. First, and I'll just speak to them in a general overview, and then I'm sure Mr. Kadis and Mr. Droz will have things to add before we go to the public. First is the experience of COVID. A number of communities were requiring sit-down restaurants, as your existing bylaw does, and guess what? That didn't work. So the COVID crisis educated us that the less contact, the better. Second, having sit-down restaurants, while a lovely idea, is one whose time is long gone. Dartmouth, for example, has an office industrial district in which sit-down restaurants are the only restaurants available. But with the opening of the Bristol County Sheriff's Department, the law school, a hospital, and a number of other locations, it proved to be completely implausible. So the drive-through takeout model serves a lot more people more quickly, and like it or not, that's pretty much what life has become. The third reason is that there's a need for synergy in the existing plaza. Anyone that shops there can see that there's a significant problem with people coming in and out. A drive-through operation will allow people to enter and leave the site and perhaps fulfill other shopping needs at the stores that are available to them. The interesting thing about a drive-through restaurant on Route 62/117 is that it's not likely to be a destination that generates additional traffic. Most of the traffic will be pass-by traffic on today's volume. So you're not looking to build a mall there, which is going to pull people in like a magnet. People are passing by. What we're trying to do is get some of the people who just drive by to stop and shop at the other locations. And lastly, we proposed it because it can be safely handled there. I personally represented Linear as they added a drive-through Starbucks to the facility underneath the Bourne Bridge, if you are familiar with that, before you go on to Cape Cod. The facility did not have a drive-through originally. Now it's safely handled by people pulling off the highway, coming and get what they need for the long ride home, and off you go. So I'll leave it to Joel first, and then Greg to add anything else that they might want to add.
Yeah, and thanks everybody for your time tonight. We face a challenge. I was trying to say before that the center is struggling now. We have been hurt by the Maynard development, plain and simple, and the market basket. And I think that collectively we have a common interest in healthy and sustainable place to shop for the town of Stow. And so we are trying, we've always demonstrated, I think, an effort to spend money redeveloping the fascia and putting our money where our mouth is, so to speak, to bring tenants into the center that we believe serve the residents of Stow. And I think that we face a new challenge now, really because there's several reasons, with not just online shopping and not just COVID, but also a new major retail development occurred successfully where the majority of the population in the area lives. And so who comes to our center, I guess, is the question. And people who drive by do, commuters, and also people where people live. And so this isn't a major office population area. So really you're left with people who drive by in residential homes, and most of the residential homes are in Maynard. So there has to be a reason why someone would go past the Market Basket Center to come to the Stow Center, because ultimately retailers live on population. So it's our intent to try to sustain our center and maintain a healthy approach. We've lost about 15,000 square feet of tenants. And so our goal is to push back and to try to win. And I think that that's in the town's and our interests. So what we're proposing now is to try to leverage off of the cars that already go by the center. We can't get people to move from Maynard to Stow. So we can attract some of those people with destination uses like Aubuchon hardware that doesn't exist in Maynard, but we also are trying to leverage off the cars that are already going by the center. And so one of the uses that we've fought hard to gain interest has been Starbucks. And Starbucks is interested in our end cap, we call it, the space closest to the road, which has been vacant for, I think, 4 years since Papagino's left. And so unfortunately, you've got vacancy on the first third, if you will, in the entire building. Loyal Companion just declared bankruptcy. There's other vacancies in the center. And so we believe that by leveraging off of the cars that already go by the center, instead of having them drive by the center, we're hoping they'll drive into the center and cross shop. And that will add vitality. We don't think that people will drive 5 and 10 miles away to come to our center, but we think that people who are already driving by will make a turn at the light rather than keep on going. And so towards that end, we have Starbucks interested in that end cap. No sit down restaurants, no restaurants at all are interested at all in that space because there's just not enough people. So it's really that simple. So that's the fundamental challenge that Stow will always face from a retail perspective, unless the density changes dramatically. So trying to use the resources that we have, trying to get those cars to come into the center instead of driving by, we're proposing a Starbucks on the end cap. The deal is actually not lucrative. It's actually a very, very expensive deal. Financially, it's actually not attractive. And I say that, and I'm happy to share some details about that, but I just want to be really, really clear. This is not a developer who's trying to make a lot of money. That's really not the case. We have to spend an enormous amount of capital to convince them to come. What this is an attempt to bring more shoppers into the center and benefit the entire center. It's a bit of a lost leader for people who have retail experience. It's spend money to get people into the center, and we believe our other tenants will benefit from it for a space that's been vacant for a long time, and to shore up that part of the building so that the flow of vacancies doesn't continue down that end of the building. Plain and simple, that is exactly, I think we're currently estimating that it's going to cost, I want to say, at least $500,000 just for a Starbucks to build it out. So it's not lucrative. It's actually not even very profitable. It's just getting people in the center. It's why we extended Aubuchon hardware, because we want people to have a reason to come to the center. So really, this is all about getting cars to go into the center, to increase sales in the center, to increase the health of our retailers in the center. The last thing I'll say is that we have a vision that I think is consistent, Valerie, with what you presented. We'd like to create a public park right now on the end cap. That's always been our vision, so that people drive up, they can get their coffee, and then right across from the drive lane, there's a nice large park where the town of Stow can gather and drink their coffee and eat their muffin and have a place to gather. So at least in that way, we are on the same page. We love the idea of building a place where people can gather and build community. I'm all for that. And that's one way we very much agree on the vision. So that's really our presentation. The hope is to bring a Starbucks that will be unique for the area, that will take people off the road and bring them into our center and bring additional vitality into a center that's been materially challenged by the manor development. And I thank everyone for your time by listening.
Thanks, Mark and Joel. Before we move into the public comment, I do want to make some clarifications, which is this bylaw change is not about Starbucks. It is not about the Linear Plaza, because the bylaw would be town-wide in any business district within the town. So I just want to make sure people understand what we'll be voting on at town meeting is, should we change this bylaw to allow these things in any of the business district properties across town. So I do want to make that clear so that everybody understands what we're voting on. So with that, I guess, Valerie, can you stop sharing just so I can see the audience a little better?
I'll take it down. Okay, there you go.
Thank you. Okay. So with that, we will open it up for public comment. And again, I'll raise your hand and I'll call upon you. If you could just state your name and your address. Hector.
Thank you. Again, Hector Costanzas, 34 Meeting House Lane, and also a member of the Select Board. Quick question about this and the Lower Village proposal for redistricting. Do I understand correctly that even if this passes, if both pass, there still would not be any drive-throughs in the Lower Village district?
I know we were discussing this, Valerie, in terms of the order. I think we wanted to get some input from town council so we could figure out how they're both on the warrant, and depending on the order, what would happen. I don't know that we have the answer to that yet, but it is something that we had a question on ourselves and wanted to gain clarity on before a town meeting.
Great, thanks.
If I could just add that, needless to say, that would be extremely important for us to understand. And I'm glad you asked the question, because for us to go in and get approval and get passed and then have it be nullified by the overall new zoning would be sort of an exercise in futility. So we would eagerly look forward to that answer.
All right, Mark first.
Yeah, that's the direction I was going with this, is that I don't understand how it can be if the petition from Linear is basically saying they want to go in the business district, and if that passes, it'll only be in the business district. And if Lower Village changes, all that changes, and then it wouldn't be allowed at Linear. I think Linear should get preference, and they should, like I've been saying right along about the Lower Village proposals, that I don't think they're ready. I don't think there was enough communication with Linear. I think that it should be held off for till another meeting, and I believe that the business district, if you allowed Linear if you held off on your Lower Village zoning amendments this time, what it would do is it allows Linear to get grandfathered in, because they'd already get their thing in for their proposal in the business district. It would be grandfathered in. If you do both at the same time, I believe you're going to be in trouble, where Linear won't be able to do that. I think Linear's got a good proposal. I don't think they're going to do anything that's negative to this town. I think they want to help us. So I do believe that we should be reviewing what we're doing with this, because it's just not right.
Thanks, Mark. Ross?
Thank you, Laurie. Can you hear me?
Yes.
First, I want to thank you and Nancy for the research you did that you posted on this topic ahead of time. I think that was helpful to see what you had to say. But maybe a little bit counter to that, I think when it comes to drive-throughs, you need to listen to what the businesses want. And we're hearing that potentially Starbucks would like a drive-through. Stow wants businesses. So I'm asking you to be open-minded as to what the businesses want. I think the number of drive-throughs in the Lower Village will be self-limiting, because you couldn't put one at every store. So I don't think, if there's a concern about, well, if you look that someone, the camel into the tent, there's going to be lots and lots of them. I don't think that will happen. So I think it is self-limiting. I saw in your note and Nancy's note a lot of concerns about traffic. I think with the properly done and supervision of a special permit, maybe you can address the traffic issues so that that doesn't become, cars backed up in 117 type situation. I do like the alternative of curbside pickup. I think I've seen that work well at other restaurants where you don't have to get out of the car and they come to you, especially when it's COVID or bad weather concerns. So maybe that's the alternative to the drive-through, but I think it may be a good, addition to it. I saw in the plan food trucks. I think food trucks can bring traffic to the lower village. They also bring chaos, park wherever they can to get to them. In order businesses, because they're paying taxes, real estate taxes for their space. The food trucks will have probably a relatively minor license fee from the select board, and they pay excise tax, but they don't pay for that square footage that they're using. And I saw in one of your comments that brick and mortar stores generate more, or in-seating restaurants generate more tax revenue than drive-throughs. Well, I think you'll lose revenue with food trucks. And I think you'll have traffic problems and again, the fairness to the folks who are paying their taxes. My last comment, and I appreciate you giving me a chance to speak, is do not close Gardner Road. I think to fit a drive-through there, it's feasible to move Gardner Road 15 or 20 feet. I think it would be the southerly direction into the common. And maybe that park concept that the previous speaker mentioned would work then. But I think closing Gardner Road will create more traffic on the 117 and not be the right solution. So possibly moving it is my suggestion. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ross. And to your point, I mean, any specific site plan for a business for linear would have to come for special permit and be considered for that. So, this bylaw proposal from a citizen's petition standpoint is simply to allow the drive-throughs. All right. Other comments from the public? There are quite a few people on, so if you have a comment, feel free to make one. All right. I'm going to go back to Hector because I don't see anyone else raising their hand right now, but please feel free to raise your hand. Actually, hold on, Hector. Let me go to Andrea on iPad 3.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, my question is, help me understand how people coming into, like, say, a Starbucks or another business where they don't have to get out of their cars, how does that help the other businesses in the plaza where people do have to get out of their cars, like Aubuchon?
So I don't know if anybody wants to make a comment on that. Joel?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So people, I'm laughing because I think people are lazy, especially when the weather is bad. But I think that it would be very, very likely that someone would pull up, get their coffee, and then would drive to the other side of the center and go to Shaw's. Or all of Starbucks, there's two answers. One is all of Starbucks sales are not drive-through. Their sales go up by 40 or 50%, and it makes the store viable for a low population market like Stow. And I think the reason why they're willing to go to Stow is because they get that 40 to 50% increase. Otherwise, they wouldn't come to Stow at all. That's why there isn't a Starbucks there now. However, I do think for those people who don't park their car, I think people would get their coffee and then drive to the other part of the center. It's people, when it's cold out, or if people are lazy, and also, and I'm not criticizing them, I'm the same way, but when it's cold out, there's snow, it's raining or whatever, when weather is not ideal, and also people just tend to drive. So I think people would drive to once you've made the commitment to get off the road, then people then are in the center and they go, oh, I didn't realize there was a hardware store here. I didn't realize this was here. I think I'll go in and do other shopping. So it's the commitment once you're in the center, and then people have already one step in the door, so to speak, to the shopping experience for those who are driving, and even for those who park it as well. It's getting people to make that commitment off the road into the center that leads to cross shopping. We have found across the board in our portfolio. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you.
May
Bob
I
Wilbur?
just add something to that, Madam Chair? It's Mark
Sure.
Bobrowski. The unusual thing about a coffee shop like this is that it has 2 peak hours on a weekday. They have the morning peak hour when people are driving to work, but they also have an afternoon peak hour in the 3 to 4 range. This is all done on the basis of transportation studies that have been compilated by the Institute of Traffic Engineers. And so that's 2 opportunities to bring people into the mall instead of the ordinary store, which only has 1 peak hour during the week.
All right, thank you, Mark. Bob Wilbur? Oh, you're on mute, Bob.
Thank you, Lori. I wanted to pick up on a couple of things that some previous speakers said. One relative to Gardner Road. So I live at 288 Red Acre Road. Lived here for about 30 years. A lot of experience heading down to the end of Red Acre Road where it meets Great Road. And as I think we all know, that intersection is pretty compromised because of the proximity to Pompasiticus. And several times per day, there's essentially gridlock and cars stack up there. Very dangerous to try to take a left, and difficult to get around someone who's waiting to try to take a left, even to take a right, difficult to get around them. So Gardner Road serves as a very, very important relief valve during those times that shouldn't be underappreciated. And it also serves as a more convenient entry into the Lower Village Plaza. And then the last comment I would make is that the Lower Village Common is one of the more historic landscapes in the entire town. The idea of putting a road through it is something that would encounter tremendous resistance. As I understand it, there were more farmers from Stow on the Lexington Battle Green than there were from Lexington. And that's where they marched at the end of the road at the Lower Village Green. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Lee Hildebrand?
I have a very, can you hear me? There we go. I have a very similar comment and concern about the traffic. I know that this bylaw wouldn't be specific to a Starbucks, but my concern is that most morning traffic is eastbound, and that would be a left-hand turn both into the plaza and out of the plaza. So that would be an extreme concern, I think, for travelers who are both going into the plaza and the ones who are trying to get to work. I think that if you're looking at these 2 different times of day that you are busy, the logical side of the street would actually be on the right side of the street, not the left side of the street. Thank you.
Thanks, Lee. Lisa Fierce. Lisa? All right, I'll come back to you, Lisa. Let's go to Kathy Sfera.
Thank you, Lori. Kathy Sfera, 74 West Acton Road, speaking as a resident and a former member of the planning board. In my opinion, the proposed zoning change, pretty much runs counter to everything that the planning board and the Lower Village subcommittee have been trying to do in Lower Village. So I would urge you to recommend against this zoning change for a couple of reasons. I'm not going to repeat much of what's already been said, but one of the significant concerns that I have is with regard to Gardner Road and the closing of Gardner Road. I, like many residents, use that as access to and from the plaza regularly. It's actually somewhat shocking to me that a private business would have the ability to close off a public way. And I think that there could be significant traffic implications, both at 117 and Red Acre Road, but also a lot more traffic impact on Samuel Prescott, which is a private way. So I think that needs to be looked at. I actually think that the site plan, the draft site plan that's been submitted is probably not approvable. So I worry that we make this zoning change and then we set the town up for potential litigation if the special permit is denied. The other thing is that, we're seeing cities like Minneapolis, we're seeing some states, New Jersey, almost entirely moving in the direction of prohibiting drive-throughs for reasons of climate change and emissions. So here we're kind of going in the opposite direction. And the other thing is that, I've just seen situation after situation where big national chains kind of come to a small town. They want the zoning change to meet their needs. And what I've seen is when the small towns push back and ask for better, they're often amazingly willing to adapt. So I would welcome Starbucks, but I think they should be asked to conform with our zoning. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. All right, I see Lisa is more than maybe a Lisa. So if you want to just state your name and go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Alan Fierce. I'm on Lisa's laptop here. She's right over here with me. So I also live on Red Acre Road. We live on Red Acre Road. And what Bob Wilbur described about the traffic congestion at the end of the road at 117, particularly during those same hours that were just described, the peak travel hours, is very difficult. Some of you on the planning board remember that I've advocated for years that there be a stoplight placed there, but I was always told that it needed to be the state that did that. And that would depend on traffic studies. I wish they would do them again because I think we would now qualify. But without a stoplight there, as I envision it, a drive-through at the old Papagino's would mean that cars would be, for drivers receiving coffee, you would have to be heading past Papagino's, picking up your coffee, and then coming out on Red Acre Road, taking a right turn, and then be at that congested intersection during those congested hours, adding to the congestion we already have there. So maybe Linear can convince the state to put a stoplight in, but unless they do, I don't see this proposal flying at all. I will tell you that for many of us, Gardner Road is our main access to the plaza, and we go to Shaw's and Abashan and other places. And if we cannot turn on Gardner Road, we are not going to be heading out toward 117 to get to the shopping center. We're going to be taking Samuel Prescott Drive, and you're going to be flooding Samuel Prescott Drive with lots more traffic than you have there now. So I know you're not talking about traffic flow at this point, but this all factors into how we feel about this proposal. So I hope you take that into consideration.
Thank you, Alan. Mark Forges?
Yes, I think some of this would have to do with, like he was just talking about, traffic flow going into that lower village area. If Starbucks were to be that end cap unit and they made their drive-through coming from Gardner Road, Red Acre Road area going into that, maybe widen the road up so they could go around the drive-through like a lot of the places do. So it would always end up being, once they come out of Starbucks, they get their stuff and end up into the parking lot of the plaza. That would also drive people into going there and say, well, gee, let me stop and maybe prepare their coffee or get have a bite of their donut before they get back on the road, and then see the plaza and say, gee, I can go to Shaw's. I can go to the if I need to work out, get rid of some of this fat from the Starbucks, I can go to the gym or go to Abashan's to pick up something they might need over there. So dumping them back out into there rather than say, okay, I'm going to congest the Gardner Road and Red Acre Road with more traffic going that direction, you just make it just a one-way going the other way. That would be my suggestion. Okay,
Thank you, Mark. Gordon Landis?
Yeah, hi, Gordon Landis, 111 Crescent Street. I want to echo some of what Kathy Sparrow said a few minutes ago, but particularly my concern is about trash and encouraging the use of disposable containers by itself, I think is bad enough. It's going against, you know, all of our green thinking and how to become a sustainable Stow. But disposable containers in a drive-through scenario, I think, is just asking for more trash on our roadways. And as somebody who's volunteered on the annual volunteer trash pickup on the Earth Day weekend, which I encourage everybody to do, it is a tremendously eye-opening experience to see the amount and the type of trash that shows up on an annual basis on our roadways. A surprising, maybe not surprising, a huge amount of that is disposable food packaging, bags, McDonald's sorts of bags, coffee cups, that kind of thing, all over the place. As Kathy said, many cities across the country and the world are looking to ban new development of drive-throughs. And something that I've seen, especially in Europe, is requiring that if there is a drive-through, that they print on the packaging the license plate of the car, so that they can. That's a way of really encouraging people to not throw their trash overboard, because they will be found out for it, and we can track them down pretty easily. So I think it's the wrong direction to go in general. I also echo the concerns about a drive-through in particular not being a good way to encourage people to get out of their cars and go into other stores. But more generally, I'm concerned about anything that uses disposable packaging as its primary mode of business. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Gordon. Let's go to Megan.
There. My name is Megan Page. My husband Mark and I are the owners of the local Dunkin' Donuts. And while we would absolutely love a drive-through, I just want to be really clear that we really want to get back to Stow, and we will be putting in our hopefully putting in our location with or without a drive-through. We have stores that have drive-throughs and we have stores that don't have drive-throughs. But I just wanted to publicly say that we support Stow and the business community here, and we want to see it thrive. And 2 other franchisees have moved out and we want to come in. So I just wanted to publicly state that.
Great. Thank you, Megan. And Hector.
Lori, Megan, can you just clarify that you were talking about, you have proposed and gotten an okay for a Dunkin' to be on the other side of the street, and it is not a drive-through, and you're okay with that, and that will be there, and that's what you're planning. So just make sure that that's understood.
Yeah, we're still working through some issues regarding water and some other things, but we've already been to the hearing, and our goal is to that. If the bylaw changes, we would love a drive-through, but we want to be super clear that we are planning to come to Stow with or without a drive-through.
Thank you, Megan. Hector, thank you for waiting.
No problem. Thanks for the opportunity to speak again. I'm a little confused, and I just want to make some clarification points. I mean, I don't understand how people would go through a drive-through and then decide to go to a store. I would see personally where I'd go to Shaw's and upon leaving think, okay, let me stop and get a cup of coffee on the way out. That's semantics. I'm not clear how drive-throughs increase trash, because I think people that are going to throw their trash out their car window are going to do it whether they got it as a to-go package or through a drive-through. But right now, we're only discussing whether drive-throughs would be allowed. We're not necessarily discussing
that is correct.
Starbucks would get a drive-through, because as Megan pointed out, Dunkin' Donuts is looking to move into with the old beef and ale. And if a drive-throughs are allowed, then we'd also have to have the discussion of having a Starbucks drive-through at the end of the shopping center, dumping out to 117, and across the street a Dunkin' Donuts drive-through dumping into the same location. And all of this would have to be discussed even after drive-throughs are allowed. Is that correct?
Exactly. So step one is for the town to decide if they want to change the zoning to allow drive-throughs in the business district. If that were to pass, then people could put forth applications to have a drive-through. In which case there would be a hearing, a public hearing to review that plan, and there would be public comment taken at that time on the specific plan. So I know many of you are making comments specific to what you think will come forward from Linear, but just beware that certainly will have its own hearing should the zoning pass.
And there'd also be input from safety boards and traffic analysis and all that kind of stuff. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other comments from the public? Let's go to Dorothy.
Mostly just reiteration of what people said about traffic, trash, and what more. It also bring forth again that I saw that seems that so many people think this is the only way they're going to get their coffee in Stow, and it's the only way Starbucks would come here. Concord doesn't allow drive-through. Acton doesn't. There's a Starbucks there that doesn't have drive-through. Another, I don't know, was Chelmsford, but there are towns, and it is, I don't know where Mr. Bobrowski was getting his information from, but various sources that I read talk about how towns and cities that are progressive are not allowing these anymore, the traffic problems that they cause. And again, this isn't, oh, we'll just get Starbucks. This opens it up to many of these on that short section of 117 where already I think we've all dealt with trying to pull in or pull out onto 117 and onto Red Acre Road and wait a long time. So I just hope people take in consideration the greater implications of what can come of this, and not just that they'll get their Starbucks. Thank you.
Thanks, Dorothy. And back to Andrea.
Yes, hi. I live on Pompasiticate Road. There's a sidewalk here, and a lot of people walk down from the direction of Maynard to the plaza. I see them going to work out or going to get groceries. So there's definitely a lot of pedestrians, and I'm wondering what the plan is to make the plaza, if there is a drive-through, still safe and attractive to pedestrian traffic, which helps all the other businesses in the plaza.
All right. I don't know if anybody from Linear wants to comment on that. It's completely at your discretion whether you want to make a comment or not.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say is that we would have a traffic study completed when we sought our final approvals, and that would be addressed in that traffic study without drilling down too much into detail. I think that's probably the best answer I can give you right now.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to move on to hear from members of the planning board. Questions or comments on the bylaw change. Who wants to go first? Karen.
I've been a little frustrated listening to all of this because it sounded more like a site plan or a special permit for Starbucks. And that is clearly not what this bylaw is about. And it's clear that if this proposal goes through, it will not be one drive-through. It could be the drive-through, it could be the Dunkin' Donuts across the street. I really appreciate that Megan said they're willing to come here whether or not drive-throughs are allowed. But she also said that she would love to have one. So you'd have one on this side of the street, on the other side of the street. If any of the south side other properties get redeveloped, they could be drive-throughs, completely contrary to what we have been working on for decades, based on what we have heard from residents from town, that we want a pedestrian safe village district. This would be a completely automobile oriented drive-through strip.
All right, thanks, Karen. Other planning board members? Nancy?
Sorry about the phone here. I'm trying to figure it out. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. I have a few comments I wanted to add to what Karen said about this isn't just a location as described at the plaza. It would include the intersection of Hudson Road and 117. There's also an undeveloped parcel at Villages at Stow right now that I saw online as commercially available for development. So there could potentially be someplace with a drive-through there. So everyone needs to keep the bigger picture in mind, even though there's just talk of a coffee shop. I do agree with the comments of people here on the call saying if someone goes through a drive-through, they aren't necessarily going to go park, get out of their car and shop, especially if the drive-through is orientated to have them pull out of the property once they go past the window. As a resident of Red Acre, I agree with what all my neighbors have said. It's very hard to pull out onto 117. And if we have to anticipate a drive-through lane also emptying into that, I think it's very hard. Also, I think we can all say we have seen the 18-wheelers and delivery trucks for the plaza come down Red Acre, and many of them turn onto Garner Road and go behind the plaza to do their drop-offs. And if they have to also negotiate pulling onto 117, I think that's a problem. Another comment, I originally moved here from our first home in South Acton, and all of our neighbors there came to Shaw's because it was a lot easier than trying to go through traffic to Roach Brothers or whatever. And by the way, Kmart is turning into a Stop and Shop soon. By cutting off access from Red Acre Road, it puts a whole nother client base for Shaw's having to deal with traffic and turning, which I don't think would be a positive result. And then my last comment, just to think about, yes, we are talking about all this as a Starbucks, but let's say the 2 busy times during commuting turn out to be not enough for Starbucks to be successful and they leave, and we have permitted a drive-through. What could possibly move in there next? So there's a whole future to consider with this, not just the immediate service of coffee. So those are my comments.
All right. John or Meg, do you want to make a comment?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, between Nancy and Karen, they've said a lot of things that I also believe in. And I think that, you know, we have to think about this in the bigger picture. Okay, this is not a Starbucks issue. Okay, although obviously it affects that, but we have to consider the long term and the broader impact of what this change might do to the lower village. And I do think that it's very contrary to the vision that we'd like to see in lower village. So I understand there's economics, and you know, I'd like to see what can be done to make the shopping center as viable as we can. I'd like to think that making some of these changes will make the shopping center more attractive, although obviously there's the feasibility of how we get from where we are now to the vision. And it's a long-term thing.
All right. Karen, did you have another comment?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment about the comment that was made previously that there aren't enough people in Stow to invite a restaurant to come to Stow, only a drive-through. I understand a new restaurant is going into the other side of town on Boxborough Road. That can't be any more remote than what Lower Village is. And we have Dunkin' Donuts that is on board to go across the street. So I'm seeing that maybe the market's coming around.
Well, I mean, look at Nan's. I mean, they don't seem to have trouble pulling customers in there.
Nope, from day one.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Meg, anything to add?
No, not to add. I just am full agreement. I just think that it's really important to this future vision. And I think that this proposal for drive-through that would ruin the common down there. I have problems with, but I just think that it's a very short-sighted proposal, and I just don't see that fitting into our vision for the future.
Debbie or Mark, Jones, anything?
Couple of, again, share so much of what everybody said, but the way I look at it, I could sort of take a step back, and so many people seem to be pinning these drive-throughs as being the silver bullet, that it's going to save the businesses, it's going to save and bring in businesses. I mean, I got to say that I was a firm all the time shopper at Shaw's forever. And only after my oldest daughter came in and our family grew from 2 of us to 6 of us, she kept saying, "Ma, you gotta go, you gotta go, you gotta go." And I finally went. And the reality of it is, it's business models. Shaw's, unfortunately, is high price, service so-so. And when I can go a couple of extra miles, and it kills me to drive by Shaw's all the time, but when I can go to Market Basket and save $50 a week, I can't overlook that. So you got to be careful. There's business models. Stow Fitness. Again, the reality of it is the pandemic hit. Nobody wanted to go to the gym. And during this time, they put in home gyms. A drive-through is not going to fix either of those. They're business models that the companies and the businesses in the district have chosen. And that's okay. But I think we have to be also upfront to say drive-throughs are not going to fix this. If anything, they may make it harder, because now, depending upon how the drive-through goes through, it may be so crazy, I don't even want to go into the plaza to go to the cleaners. So we're just seeing a small snapshot, but the drive-through is not the silver bullet. There's business models and traffic and all of that I think plays a huge part in the issues within the plaza.
Mark Jones?
Yes. My thoughts are that a drive-through basically creates a kind of unusual pedestrian where we are trying to create a person-oriented pedestrian, and a drive-through is a 15-foot long, 8-foot wide, 2-ton pedestrian. And we are specifically trying to avoid having that kind of activity in the lower district.
All right, I'll just make a few comments, and I know we have a few hands up. So I'll make a few comments just to try to close out the planning
Lori
board
had
comments.
can I make one other comment?
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Yeah, the other comment I had about this is, I think in a current society, when I think people are being more conscious about the environmental impacts of things, I think, and we've talked about the additional trash that would be generated from the drive-through, that at least, right, it should be that whatever packaging is used should be packaging that's not plastic and is biodegradable. That technology is available. I mean, you can have paper straws, you can have paper cups, and other things. And I think if this were to go through, it should at least support having more environmentally friendly packaging to be used in those drive-throughs.
Nancy?
Just one quick thing. I assume there would be indoor dining there as well, with some takeout. I don't know how we address this, but the Dunkin' Donuts trash receptacles outside the former store were constantly overflowing. I think there's got to be some regulations about how often trash is removed. And also, people end up emptying their own car trash into these places, containers. So I think that looked just as bad as trash just thrown on the ground.
I guess I'll summarize my thoughts in terms of, I agree with what other planning board members have said, that this is counter to the vision of pedestrian friendly people gathering places. I think that I can picture 30 cars in line, or I can picture an outdoor gathering place where 30 people can have coffee together. I think one of the challenges is that we have so little business land if we start allowing drive-throughs in the business district in general, a large portion of the land would go towards drive-throughs rather than gathering places. So that is my concern. Again, I'm not going to comment on the specific site because that's not what this is about. This is about inviting the drive-throughs around town. And I think there's a secondary point here, which is really about greenhouse gases and, you know, our sustainable committees, et cetera, as well as the state regulations trying to truly reduce greenhouse gases. And I think this is also counter to that as well. All right, we will look to close the public hearing, but go ahead. I'll call on a few people that have their hands up. Gordon Landis.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be very brief. I just want to make a comment about the synergy of the various shops. I'm thinking specifically about the Lower Village, but this is a general issue about synergy among shops. And that, yeah, sure, we could go to Market Basket, but if I've already gone to the gym and I'm walking from the gym to my car, well, it's very easy to go to the liquor store next door. Or if I've gone to the liquor store, well, maybe I'll drop into Shaw's, although, yeah, I could go 3 extra miles if I was really on a shopping trip, but there is a synergy there. And I do appreciate the fact that we've generated a pretty good synergy where I will often go to one of the places, Aubuchon, and drop by the liquor store. I'll go to the gym and I'll drop by Shaw's. And that kind of synergy is a walk-in synergy. It's not a drive-through synergy. And I do want to try to find a way to get more of that. I also think in terms of the specific store, many of these stores do want to, the fast food restaurants do want to generate more business for rapid drive-through. But there's also the argument that when you walk in, that's when you see their croissant. And so there is a benefit, not just for walk around to the next store, but walk in and see the things that this store offers. And that kind of behavior, I think, is a more sustainable and hopefully better for all the businesses.
I will say, I will go back to a couple of things people have said where business model really does matter. I think Nan's is an example of a business that has been innovative with taking orders online, having them pick up, having a place to pick up outside, etc. And they've proven that given their product and their offering, they can make a successful business. We do want to try to close the public hearing, but so I'm going to call upon those who already have their hands up, and I'm going to ask you, because you've all already spoken, please only go to new items and stick to 1 minute. So we'll do a quick round, flash round. So Dorothy, quick, 1 minute.
I forgot to put my hand down. Go to the next one.
Thank you.
Okay.
Andrea. Also, okay,
Sorry.
Mark.
Okay, the only thing I had to add into is that, we're talking about the Lower Village and traffic and everything else. But, I like the idea of the plan that you guys have in place or you're trying to put in place. The problem I have is we have a road that's in front of it, 117, that the traffic is 35 miles an hour and we have no control of it. You want to put these big buildings in front of these, right against the roadside. You can have all this traffic going by 35 miles an hour. What you should be concentrating on is trying to slow the traffic down in the middle of town. That would help with drive-throughs. It would help with Red Acre Road. It would help with Pompous Syndicate. It would help all those things if we could slow that traffic down. So I think that's something else. That's, if nothing else, it should be one of the things on your master plan.
All
Okay.
right.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Okay. I see the Fierces want to make one more comment.
Yes, just a quick question is I'm wondering if Starbucks is willing to come in only on the condition that they're allowed to have a drive-through.
I believe that is the case, but Joel or Mark, if you want to confirm that.
Yeah, so there's no Starbucks in Stow now because they haven't had a drive-through. So the condition is explicit that without a drive-through, they absolutely will not come to the site. So
Just one thing I'll add to that is if you actually research Starbucks, their strategy is actually drive-through. So they are purposely looking to add stores, but only stores with drive-throughs in general. So that's their company strategy. It's not necessarily only this site, but if you do some research on Starbucks, that is the case. And what I would say is, you know, it's a chain and they have a certain way of working and that's what they're used to. And so that's what they're trying to force in wherever they go. That's the model that they work under. Again, other successful businesses in town have different models that they work under. So, all right. Anybody else? Before I entertain a motion to close the hearing.
I make the motion to close the hearing.
Second.
All right. Any further comment before we take a vote to close the public hearing? And just as we have a lot of people on the line, just remember, once we close the public hearing, we can't take any more public input. All right. So with that, I will
Just want to say thanks for all the people who came. It was a good turnout and I got a lot of good feedback.
All right, so let's take a roll call vote to close the public hearing. Meg.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Nancy.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Aye. Yeah, I second John's. Thank you for everyone for coming. Thank you for Select Board for joining us. And it was a great turnout.
Great. Yeah.
Thank you.
I can say it's a good thing we're doing this virtual. We wouldn't have
Yeah.
had
We wouldn't have fit in the room, right?
How many people, how many attendees?
It was up over 70 at one point.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That is
That's
a
good.
huge silver lining of Zoom. It really is.
It is, yeah.
I was
It
hoping
really
more
is.
people would talk, but
They got going.
Just a question. Does the board want to vote to on whether to support the article, or would you like to postpone till later? If you do vote now, I believe there's an opportunity to have a there may be an opportunity to have a statement in the warrant.
I would vote to do that.
I could be wrong on that though.
Well, at town meeting, I assume the planning board will be asked to whether or not we recommend or don't recommend this article.
possibly, but the moderator tends to skip us.
Well,
Yeah.
it's a new moderator. I don't think
know.
it will happen.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Is there
But
any,
it's a
moderator,
requirement
right?
that we make a recommendation.
is there any information we're missing to help us make a recommendation?
Well, we can't take any more. We just closed the
Public hearing's
hearing.
over.
Right, right. So delaying it wouldn't change anything, I guess.
I guess that's true. Huh?
We could delay until just that discussion until we do our public hearing of the other articles, if you wish.
But why? I don't wish it.
The only difference is whether you would want the recommendation written in the warrant or just wait until making the recommendation at town meeting.
I would
could
love
agree
it
with
written
that.
in the warrant, and then we actually know for sure that our word is out there.
Yep, I agree.
I could be wrong on that point. It may not be within the warrant. I'm forgetting what happens and what has happened in past years, but
Yeah, typically
Yeah,
it's just an explanation
yeah.
at the end. Yeah. I'll
Can
go
I
in
just
and
ask
I don't know what the
how
select
things-
board would think.
Yeah, can I just ask how things work? So at town meeting, do the creators of this citizens petition stand up and speak about it, or is it a resident who signed it? I'm just curious
So-
because
Yeah, so it would be certainly up to the town moderator's discretion, but it would be within reason that the petitioner would ask either to be able to speak themselves or to have a representative speak. So it would likely be one of the folks who spoke tonight who would be able to speak at town meeting.
I will tell you, based on tonight's public hearing, I am extremely concerned of how much was about site specific versus a general discussion of whether the town wants this, and people are going to get confused.
Yeah.
Oh, hi Jim. I didn't mean anything.
But yeah, they're gonna think they're voting for Starbucks specifically.
And frankly, if it passes, nobody says, I mean, there still needs to be a special hearing. So I definitely want to avoid confusion.
I heard the moderator mention from Kathy's computer.
I defended the moderator.
Yes.
Now, you were not the moderator, so don't take it personally. But when they asked if we wanted, if there was the potential to have our recommendation in print, I basically was for that, because I said the past several times the moderator skipped asking the planning board for their recommendation on multiple things.
Yeah.
Multiple town meetings.
And I said, we have a new moderator now, so.
Right.
Oh, I didn't. So I actually think what goes in the actual warrant package is all up to the select board. But if you're at Stow's and you tell me that you want to speak, and on this issue, I think I would assume you want to speak, I will be sure to make sure you either have a verbal or a written chance to.
And certainly, I think there are two reasons why we would want to speak. One is to give our recommendation because this is a zoning change.
Yeah.
But two, also because we would want to make a clarification that this change is to allow a zoning change in all of business district land across the town. This has nothing to do with site specific.
Right. Yeah, and I'll probably want you, at least formalistically, to cover that you had a hearing, covered all the statutory. And, I ought to take the chance to I assume someone's going to do a presentation. I'm going to want whoever does the presentation to address that question that came up at the very beginning of this hearing, which was, what's the interplay between the planning board's proposed zoning changes and the citizens petition? If one passes, what happens to the other one? And just get that out front.
And we really need to understand from town council what it is, because I think that people may want one order or another, or differences between that. But at the same time, I'm also concerned that what gets presented is going to be site specific, Starbucks specific, and that is not what the bylaw is about.
Well, I don't think there's much I can do about that, but because that's the content of the presentations. But please be sure to send somebody to Stow's May 4th, 7 p.m. And I'm certainly hoping that the people heading up the citizens petition have gotten the same message, so we can all work this out. How much time people are going to have for presentations, order, things like that.
Just a quick question about something you said. So, but as the town moderator, wouldn't you be able to limit content if it was not directly relevant to what was being proposed?
Yes, but if people are talking about Starbucks, I think I'd be pretty hard pressed to say that that's irrelevant. I think it's certainly related.
But if they're talking about the site specifics, that is irrelevant, because that is governed under special permit hearing, not zoning bylaw. In terms of all the things like I said tonight about Gardner Road closing, about
I understand what you're saying. I can't imagine myself shutting down someone when they get into site specifics because of that. I think that's more the kind of thing that a rebuttal would be appropriate for.
Okay. Linda, did you want to add a comment?
Just as the town clerk comment, I will want to make sure that I get a written report from the planning board before town meeting. We want to make sure that we have it in hand. Because I think usually I make sure that the moderator references it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Linda. That's helpful.
So it seems like to me that there are basic things that we as a planning board need to make really clear before the discussion and before people vote. And that to me is a reason to vote tonight, get our statement written and have it go into the town warrant. So everything is really clear about what the implications of this particular proposal are.
Are you done with me?
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
We know how to find you.
I'll just tell you this. Yes, you'll have a chance to do a presentation, but I can't imagine going to a vote if a member of the planning board is standing at a microphone. Okay, so don't think that's the only chance you'll have to speak.
Okay.
Especially on and we can work this out at Stow's. Well, I can't imagine if a member of the planning board is standing at the mic that I would just go to a vote.
I guess just one more question, Jim. I'm not sure who in town is in charge of sorting through the legalities of one article's impact on another, and then what order that may need to go as a result of that, etc.
I
Yeah.
would
So-
assume that there will be an amendment on the floor by the petitioner or a resident.
So
to add theirs to ours.
Yes.
Okay.
Lori, I think the order of the warrant articles is up to the select board.
Understood.
In Stow, the moderator, as I read the bylaw, does not have the ability on his or her own to vary the order. That has to be done by vote of town meeting. I will be thinking, assuming that these two articles are close to one another, or even if they're not, I will be thinking about the possibility of debating them together, but voting them separately. And I have not seen anything officially on any amendments. I will be wanting to send anyone who has amendments the message in Stow. The rules say get your amendments in writing to the moderator. And the earlier they do that, the quicker they will get a ruling on whether or not it's in scope. And I'd like to be able to see any amendments that can be reasonably foreseen in plenty of time before Stow's, so that at Stow's and hopefully before Stow's, I have ruled on whether or not I think the amendments are in order and people can make plans about their presentations accordingly. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Kathy,
Okay,
did you want to add something?
Yeah, I know the hearing's closed, so I don't want to cross that line, but at the beginning of the meeting, Joel took some swipes at the planning board for not consulting with him, and you all were very kind in not swiping back because the citizens petition was just sort of dumped on the town. I think there's an opportunity to reach out and try to have a conversation with him. If this article is defeated by town meeting, it cannot be reconsidered by town meeting again for 2 years unless the planning board is in support of it. So there's an opportunity for some discussion, I think. So I don't know whether that means it's better to vote tonight or not, but I think he can read the tea leaves.
Okay.
Just a
Thank
strategy
you.
thought.
All right, so back to the planning board. Do we want to take a vote on this right now, or do we want to punt it till we discuss the other articles? Anyone?
I don't think there's anything that would change my vote
Yeah, I was gonna say the
from what
same
I
thing.
would incline to vote today or next
Yeah.
week. Yeah.
That's the way I feel too. I'm
I
ready to
just have
vote.
I have a quick question. Would a member of the board be doing a presentation to when this article comes up separate from our Lower Village presentation? I wasn't sure if that's what Jim was saying.
No, we
I
wouldn't
thought
make a
that's-
presentation. We clearly can make, I think what I was trying to ask him is that we at least get to make a clarifying statement so people understand what they're voting on.
And we can still make comments and go to the
And make
microphone.
our, and verbally make our recommendation, the reasons why.
Okay.
So I'm hearing people want to vote now.
Yep.
All right, then I will entertain a motion.
I move that the planning board not support the petition for drive-through
Inclusion.
food establishments in the Lower Village district or in the business district.
In the business district. Second,
I want to preface it as the Lower Village Business District or the business district, because we're not sure where it's going to land.
Any
If it's-
business district is what you're saying.
Yeah.
well,
Okay, so that was the motion. John, did I hear you second?
yes, second.
Any discussion that board wants to have that? What do you think?
I think
It's already
we've-
been said.
Yeah, I think we've said it all. It's contrary to the vision for
Yeah.
pedestrian friendly
Just
oriented
throw in the towel.
community. Yeah, and traffic issues and.
All right. With that, then we'll take a roll call vote. So Meg,
I,
John,
Aye.
Nancy,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
and I.